When I tried to open the refrigerator in my own kitchen, she smacked my hand away. Just like that, as if I were a naughty child stealing cookies. The sound echoed in the silence of 12 minutes past midnight, and for a moment, I couldn't believe what had just happened. I stood there, frozen, staring at my reddened hand, feeling the physical sting which was nothing compared to the deep humiliation I felt inside. Victoria looked at me with those eyes full of contempt, as if I were a bothersome bug in her way, and said in a glacial voice I will never forget, "Where do you think you're going without permission?" I couldn't answer. The words were caught in my throat. I felt like my own house had become a prison where I was the intruder. And then I heard the voice of Robert, my son, the boy I carried for 9 months, the one I nursed, the one I watched over every night when he had a fever, saying something that split my soul in two. "My wife is the owner of the house now. You need to ask her permission even to breathe." In that moment, my world came crashing down. Not because of the slap, not because of her words, but because my own son was betraying me. I felt as if the floor opened up beneath my feet and swallowed me whole. I was 62 years old and never imagined I would end up like this, being humiliated in my own home, the very one I built with so much effort alongside my deceased husband. The walls that once echoed with laughter and love now seemed to be closing in on me, suffocating me. I looked at Robert, searching for any trace of the son I knew, but what I saw was a stranger. A completely dominated man, with empty eyes, repeating his wife's words as if they were a sacred commandment. I wondered at what moment I lost him, at what point he stopped being my boy and became this woman's puppet. Victoria crossed her arms over her chest and smiled. That smile was utterly devoid of humanity. It was pure, distilled cruelty. "Now get back to your room, Lauren," she said, using my name as if it were an insult. "And the next time you're hungry, you ask me politely. There are rules here, and you are going to follow them. Understood?" I nodded because I couldn't do anything else. My legs were trembling, and I felt that if I opened my mouth, only a broken sob would come out. I turned around and walked toward my room, feeling their gazes fixed on my back like knives. Every step felt heavy, as if I were carrying the entire world on my shoulders. I closed my bedroom door and sank onto the bed. Tears began to roll down my cheeks uncontrollably. I cried silently, biting my lips to keep from making a sound, because even to cry I needed permission in my own house. My stomach was rumbling with hunger, but the emotional pain was much stronger than any physical need. How had I gotten here? How did I let this happen? The questions tortured me as I stared at my bedroom ceiling, the very ceiling I had painted years ago when my husband was still alive. I felt like a stranger in my own life, as if someone had stolen my existence and left me only an empty shell. I thought of Walter, my late husband, and wondered what he would say if he could see this. He was always a man of principle, a man who never would have allowed anyone to treat me this way. He would have confronted Robert. He would have brought him to his senses. But Walter had been in the ground for 3 years, and I was completely alone in this nightmare. I remembered the night Robert called me 6 months ago, with that desperate voice no mother can ignore. "Mum, I need your help," he said. "Victoria and I are going through a tough time. I lost my job and we can't pay the rent. Could we stay with you just for a while? I promise it will be temporary." How could I refuse? He was my son, my only son, the most important person in my life after Walter. Of course, I said yes. Of course. I never imagined I was inviting the devil into my home. At first, everything seemed normal. Victoria was polite, even pleasant. She helped me with some housework, smiled when I looked at her, and called me mother-in-law, with apparent affection. Robert seemed relieved to have a roof over his head, and constantly promised he would find a job soon and they would leave. "It's just temporary, Mum," he repeated every week. But the weeks turned into months, and I started noticing small changes. Victoria began rearranging my kitchen without asking. She moved my pots and pans to places where I couldn't easily reach them. She replaced my bath towels with new ones she had bought, putting mine away in a drawer as if they were garbage. Small invasion that I ignored because I didn't want to cause conflict. Then came the suggestions. "Lauren, don't you think it would be better if you ate dinner earlier? Robert and I need privacy in the evenings." "Oh, Lauren, try not to make so much noise in the morning. You wake us up." Each suggestion was an order in disguise, and I, like a fool, obeyed to keep the peace. Robert never said anything. When I tried to talk to him about Victoria's behavior, he would just shrug and say, "She's stressed about the financial situation, Mum. Give her time." It was always about giving her time, always about being patient, always me who had to concede. One day, Victoria decided my television schedule was inappropriate because she wanted to watch her shows. Another day, she determined that I couldn't use the washing machine on weekends because it was her time to do their laundry. And Robert nodded to everything, like an obedient dog following its master's commands. But nothing prepared me for what came next. Nothing prepared me for the moment. My own house would stop being mine, and I would become a prisoner in the place where I spent the best years of my life. The storm was just beginning, and I had no idea that the worst was yet to come. It all truly began to change 3 months ago, when Victoria announced during dinner that she had made some important decisions to improve cohabitation in the house. I remember she put down her silverware with a sharp clank that made me jump in my seat. Robert looked at her with that sickly, adoring expression that turned my stomach. "Starting tomorrow," Victoria said, with a voice so firm she sounded like she was leading a corporate meeting, "we are going to establish clear rules. This house needs order and discipline." I stared at her, not understanding, waiting for Robert to intervene, to say something, anything. But he only nodded as if it all made perfect sense. "Rules?" I asked timidly, feeling my voice tremble. "Victoria, this is my house. I don't understand why we need rules." She looked at me as if I had just said the stupidest thing in the world. She sighed in exasperation and crossed her arms. That gesture I already knew, which meant she was about to say something nasty to me. "Precisely why we need rules, Lauren. Because this is your house, and you've let it turn into chaos. Robert and I can't live like this. If we're going to stay here, things will be done my way." The way she pronounced my way chilled me to the bone. She wasn't suggesting, she was imposing. And Robert still sat there, silent, betraying me with his indifference. The next day, a list appeared taped to the refrigerator. A long list, written in Victoria's perfect handwriting, detailing everything I could and could not do in my own house. I read every line, feeling the indignation rise in my chest, like a wild animal trying to escape. Kitchen hours. Lauren may only use the kitchen between 8 and 9 in the morning and between 2 and 3 in the afternoon. Outside of those hours, the kitchen is Victoria's exclusive territory. Exclusive territory? In my own house? I continued reading with trembling hands. Bathroom use. Lauren must shower before 7 in the morning or after 10 at night, so as not to interfere with the couple's routine. My lifelong routine, the shower I took every morning at 8 while listening to the news on the radio, no longer mattered. I had to adapt to them. Living room use. Friday and Saturday nights are exclusive to Robert and Victoria. Lauren must remain in her room after 8 in the evening. They were banishing me to my room as if I were an old piece of furniture cluttering the living area. The list continued with more than 20 points, each one more absurd and humiliating than the last. I tore the list off the refrigerator with such force that I ripped a corner. I went straight to the room where Robert and Victoria were still sleeping. I knocked insistently, feeling the rage run through my veins like boiling lava. Robert, Robert, I need to talk to you right now. Victoria opened the door wearing a pink silk robe I had never seen, probably bought with the money I gave Robert for his expenses. She looked at me annoyed, as if I were a bothersome salesperson interrupting her morning. What's wrong, Lauren? We were sleeping. This, I said, shaking the list in front of her face. This is what's wrong. Who do you think you are to set rules in my house? My voice came out louder than I intended, years of pent-up frustration finally finding an outlet. Behind Victoria, Robert appeared, rubbing his eyes, dishevelled and confused. Mum, what's going on? He asked, with that little boy voice he used when he wanted to avoid trouble. But he wasn't a child anymore. He was a 35-year-old man who had chosen his wife over his mother, and that choice was destroying me little by little. What's going on is that your wife has put a list of rules on my refrigerator as if this were her house, and I were an unwelcome guest. Are you going to allow this, Robert? Are you really going to let her treat me like this? I looked at him pleadingly, searching for some trace of the loving son who used to defend his mother from anything. Victoria stepped forward before Robert could answer. These rules are necessary, Lauren. You can't keep living as if you were alone. Now there are 3 people in this house, and we need organization. Or would you prefer we keep living in disorder? Disorder, I repeated, incredulous. I lived in this house for 40 years with my husband, and there was never any disorder. The disorder started when you 2 arrived. The words came out before I could stop them, raw and honest. I saw Victoria's face harden, her eyes narrowing like a snake ready to strike. Robert, she said without taking her eyes off me, tell your mother that if she doesn't like the rules, maybe she should look for another place to live. The silence that followed was deafening. I waited for Robert to explode, to tell his wife she was completely insane, that this was his mother's house and no one was going to kick her out. But Robert just sighed, ran a hand through his hair and said, Mum, Victoria has a point. The rules will help all of us get along better. It's not a big deal. They're just some schedules. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. My own son was taking her side, validating this craziness, making me the villain in my own story. It's not a big deal, I whispered, feeling the tears start to sting my eyes. Robert, they are taking my house. They are taking my life. How can you not see this? I reached out to him, an instinctive maternal gesture, trying to reconnect with my son. But he took a step back, moving away from me, choosing distance. You're exaggerating, Mum. Nobody is taking anything from you. We're just trying to make this work for everyone. If we could leave, we would have done it already. But we don't have the money. We need you to be understanding. Understanding. That word became the mantra Robert would repeat over the following months every time I tried to defend myself. Victoria smiled with satisfaction, knowing she had won. I'm glad you understand, Robert. Your mother needs to learn that things have changed. She turned and went back into the room, leaving me standing there with my son, feeling the abyss between us grow wider and impossible to cross. How can you let her manipulate you like this? I asked him in a low voice, a last attempt to make him react. Your father would be so disappointed to see you like this, Robert, turned into a man with no backbone. I know they were harsh words, but it was the truth, and someone had to tell him. Robert's face hardened. Don't bring Dad into this. He's not here, and you have no idea what he would think. Victoria is my wife, and I'm going to support her. If you can't respect that, then we have a problem. He turned his back on me and closed the door in my face, literally. The sound of that door closing echoed in my chest like the closing of a coffin. I stood there in the hallway, the crumpled list still in my hand, feeling my world fall apart. I had lost my son. I had lost him to a manipulative woman who had found the perfect victim, an insecure, unemployed, vulnerable man, easy to control. I shuffled back to my room, suddenly feeling like a 100-year-old woman. I sat on the edge of my bed and looked at the photographs on my nightstand. Walter and I on our wedding day, young and full of dreams. Baby Robert, chubby and smiling in my arms. A family photo at the beach, all of us laughing under the sun. That's when everything broke. From that day on, I followed the rules. Not because I agreed with them, but because I didn't have the strength to fight. Every morning I woke up at 6 to shower before the forbidden time. I cooked within the narrow time margins Victoria had assigned me. I locked myself in my room on Friday and Saturday nights, like a prisoner serving a sentence. And the worst part of it all was seeing Robert every day, walking past him in the hallways of my house without recognizing him. The son I raised, the boy who used to hug me and tell me I was the best mum in the world, now looked at me as if I were an obstacle in his life. Victoria had completely transformed him, and I didn't know how to get him back. The following weeks were a silent nightmare. Every day, Victoria found new ways to remind me that I no longer owned my own life. She began to rearrange the entire house to her taste, without consulting me, as if my 40 years of living there meant absolutely nothing. One day, I came home from grocery shopping and discovered she had moved all the living room furniture. My favourite armchair, the one where Walter and I used to sit to watch movies on Sunday nights, was now crammed against the wall, almost hidden behind a huge plant she had bought. In its place, a new grey couch occupied the centre of the room. "I bought it with the money Robert saved," she said, when she saw me staring open-mouthed. Both of us knew Robert didn't have a job, that the money came from my pension, but she dared to lie to my face. "You didn't consult me," I said, trying to stay calm, even though I felt my chest burning with indignation. "You could have asked me before changing everything." Victoria didn't even look up from her cell phone. She was sitting on her new couch, legs crossed, painting her nails a deep red colour that reminded me of blood. "I don't need your permission to improve this house, Lauren. It was old and depressing. Now at least it has some style." The contemptuous way she said old and depressing hit me like a slap. She wasn't just talking about the furniture. She was talking about me, my life, everything Walter and I built together. I tried to talk to Robert that night, but he already had his automatic response ready. "Mum, the old couch was worn out. Victoria is just trying to make the house nicer. You should thank her instead of complaining." Thank her? For spending my money on things I didn't ask for erasing my husband's memories from this house, for transforming my home into something unrecognizable. But that was just the beginning. Victoria started inviting her friends over without telling me. They arrived in a group, loud and invasive, occupying the living room as if it were a public cafe. I would lock myself in my room, listening to their laughter and conversations, feeling like a stranger in my own space. Once, I went out to go to the bathroom, and one of them looked me up and down with obvious disdain. "She's your mother-in-law?" she asked Victoria, in a tone she didn't bother to lower. Poor thing. It must be hard living as a hanger-on at her age. Her friends laughed, and I felt the humiliation burn inside me. Victoria didn't say anything to defend me. She just smiled and changed the subject, leaving me standing there like a fool while they all ignored me. She began to control what I ate. She said I needed to diet, that I should take better care of myself at my age. She eliminated everything I liked from the pantry. The oatmeal cookies I ate with my coffee in the morning, the chocolate I saved for difficult times, even the strawberry jam Walter used to buy me every month. "Those things have too much sugar, Lauren. They aren't healthy," she would say, while filling the shelves with her ridiculously expensive organic products that I ended up paying for. When I dared to buy something for myself, something small that would give me even a moment of happiness, Victoria would find it and throw it in the trash. "I told you, no sugars, Lauren. Why won't you listen to me?" And Robert, my own son, nodded as if she were doing me a favor, as if controlling every aspect of my life was an act of love, not cruelty. One afternoon, I decided to cook the pot roast that Robert had always loved, that recipe my mother taught me, and that had been in our family for generations. I wanted to reclaim even a moment of connection with my son, to remind him of the days when we were a happy family. I spent the whole afternoon in the kitchen during my small allowed time window, putting all my love into that dish. When I served dinner, Victoria smelled the pot roast and wrinkled her nose in disgust. "What is that? It smells terrible." My heart sank. "It's Robert's favourite pot roast," I said, trying to smile. "He used to love it when he was a kid." I looked at Robert, hoping he would remember, that he would say something nice, that he would give me even a crumb of affection. But Victoria spoke first. "Robert doesn't eat that kind of heavy food anymore. We're watching what we eat, remember? Besides, I already prepared salads for dinner." She pointed to the refrigerator where there were indeed 2 perfectly arranged salads in glass containers. Just 2 salads, one for her, one for Robert. None for me. "I ate during my allowed time slot," she added with that fake smile I hated so much. "I didn't know you were going to cook, though you should have told me. The rules say you have to coordinate with me before using the kitchen, outside of your hours." It wasn't true. I had cooked exactly in my assigned time, but arguing with her was useless. She always found a way to make me look like the culprit. Robert didn't even try the pot roast. He ate his salad in silence while I stared at the pot full of food that no one was going to eat. All that afternoon wasted, all that love rejected. That night, I threw the pot roast in the trash and cried over the sink, trying not to make a sound so they wouldn't hear me. The days turned into an endless cycle of small humiliations that accumulated like stones on my chest. Victoria criticized my clothes, saying I dressed like an old lady and that it was embarrassing when we went out together. She criticized the way I talked, the way I walked, the way I existed. And Robert never said anything, never defended me. He just nodded or looked away. He stopped calling me Mom. Now he only said Lauren, with that impersonal tone you use with an acquaintance, not with the woman who gave you life. Every time I heard my name on his lips, without Mom preceding it, I felt a little part of me die inside. Victoria had managed to erase even that, even the most sacred bond between a mother and her son. I started being afraid in my own house, afraid to make noise, afraid to take up space, afraid to breathe too loudly. I walked on tiptoes through the hallways like a ghost, trying not to bother them, trying not to exist too much. My own presence had become undesirable, and I was shrinking every day, becoming smaller, disappearing. One night, I overheard Victoria talking to someone on the phone. Her voice cut through the thin walls of my house. "Don't worry, I almost have her where I want her," she said, laughing. "It's only a matter of time before she decides to leave herself. And when that happens, this house will be completely ours. Robert already signed the papers I gave him. The fool didn't even read them." My blood ran cold. What papers? What was she talking about? I stood glued to my bedroom wall, holding my breath, trying to hear more. Yes, the lawyer said that signature is enough. When she leaves or something happens, Robert automatically inherits everything, and I, as his wife, will have a claim to everything. That stupid old woman has no idea what's coming. I felt nauseous. Victoria wasn't just taking my house away from me while I was alive. She was planning to keep everything legally. And Robert, my naive and manipulated son, had signed something without even consulting me. The level of betrayal was so profound I couldn't process it. My own son was helping to rob me, though he probably didn't even know it. The next day, I tried to talk to Robert about what I had heard. Son, I need you to tell me the truth. Did you sign any documents recently? Anything related to the house or inheritances? He looked at me confused for a second, then uncomfortable. Victoria asked me to sign some papers from the lawyer. She said it was to legally protect us in case something happened to you, to make everything easier. And you didn't think to consult me? I asked, feeling my voice break. You didn't think maybe I should know about documents that involve my house? Robert shrugged, that gesture of indifference he had perfected in these months. Victoria said it was normal, that all families do this. I didn't want to bother you with legal nonsense. Legal nonsense? My savings, my home, my entire life reduced to legal nonsense. Robert, your wife is manipulating you. She is planning to take everything. Don't you see it? But before he could answer, Victoria appeared, as she always did, at the exact moment to interfere. Filling Robert's head with nonsense again, Lauren. Don't you ever get tired of causing problems? She looked at me with those cold, calculating eyes. Robert, tell your mother to stop inventing conspiracies. She's paranoid because of her age. And Robert, like the perfect puppet he had become, looked at me and said, Mum, Victoria is right. You're seeing problems where there are none. In that moment, I knew I had completely lost my son. There was no way to make him see the truth. Victoria had built a wall between us so solid that my words no longer reached him. Things got worse in ways I never thought possible. Victoria began controlling even the air I breathed in my own house. She decided my room needed renovation, and one day, while I was at the bank cashing my pension check, she went in and removed all my things. When I returned, I found boxes piled up in the hallway and my most treasured possessions carelessly tossed about. What did you do? I shouted when I saw her come out of my room with a bag full of my photographs. Those are my things. You can't touch them. Victoria didn't even flinch. She set the bag on the floor and dusted off her hands as if she had been handling trash. Relax, Lauren. I'm just organizing. Your room was a mess, full of old junk no one needs. I opened one of the boxes, and my heart broke into 1,000 pieces. There were the love letters Walter wrote me during our courtship, the drawings Robert made in kindergarten, the shawl my mother knitted for me before she died. Everything crumpled and mixed with old clothes, with no respect, no care. These things are my life, I said, with tears rolling down my cheeks. They aren't junk. They are my memories. Well, your memories take up too much space, Victoria replied, crossing her arms. Besides, I need that closet for my clothes. The one in our room is already full. Our room. The master bedroom that had been Walter's and mine for decades was now theirs. And now they wanted my closet, my space, everything I had left. I won't give you my closet, I said, trying to sound firm even though my whole body was trembling. You already have the master bedroom, the big bathroom, half the house. My room is the only thing I have left. Victoria smiled, that snake-like smile I knew so well. Well, then I guess these boxes will stay here in the hallway. It would be a shame if someone tripped over them and got hurt. It was a veiled threat. If I didn't yield, she would destroy my things, throw them out, make them disappear. I saw it in her eyes, that calculated cruelty she had perfected. I swallowed and nodded, defeated. Fine, you can use the closet. Her smile widened. I knew you would come around, Lauren. See? When you cooperate, everything is easier. That night, I put my most precious memories into a small shoebox that I hid under my bed. Walter's letters, the photos of baby Robert, the engagement ring I no longer wore because Victoria said it was old-fashioned. Everything I had left of my former life now fit into a box I had to hide as if I were a criminal. Victoria started inviting Robert out without me, something they had never done before. "Let's go to the movies," she would say, taking Robert's arm. "Just the two of us. We need couple time." And they would leave, leaving me alone in the house, my house, feeling like an intruder who should be grateful they allowed me to stay. When they returned, they always brought takeout, but only for the two of them. The smell of pizza or fried chicken filled the house while I was in my room with an empty stomach, wondering when my life had turned into this. Once, Robert knocked on my door and offered me a slice of pizza. "We brought extra in case you were hungry." Before I could accept, I heard Victoria's voice from the living room. "Robert, come here. That pizza is for lunch tomorrow. You can't just be giving it away." And Robert, as always, obeyed. He shrugged and told me I'm sorry before closing my door. He didn't even have the courage to stay, to face his wife, to choose me even just this once. The humiliations became part of my daily routine. Victoria started leaving me lists of chores to do: wash her clothes, clean her bathroom, cook her favorite meals. When I protested, she said it was the least I could do since I was living in the house for free. For free. In my own house, which I paid for with my working money for years. One day, I dared to refuse. "I'm not washing your clothes, Victoria. I am not your maid." Her face transformed into a mask of fury. "Oh no? Well then, I want you to pay me rent. If you won't contribute with work, contribute with money. $500 a month for your room." $500? I repeated, incredulous. "This is my house. I don't have to pay you anything." Victoria came closer to me, so close I could smell her expensive perfume, the one she bought with my money. "This house will be Robert's someday, and Robert is my husband. So technically, I have as much right as you do. Now you either wash my clothes or you pay me." I didn't have $500 extra. My pension barely covered the house bills, food, and the expenses Victoria was constantly generating. So I washed her clothes, hating myself with every garment I put in the washer. Hating my cowardice, my inability to defend myself, my fear of being completely alone. Robert finally found a job, but it was a part-time position that barely paid $800 a month. I thought maybe that would change things, that maybe now they could leave, and I would get my house, my life back. But instead of looking for their own place, Victoria announced that the money would be used to further improve the house. They bought a huge television for the living room, a ridiculously expensive set of pots and pans, new curtains for all the windows. Everything with the money that was supposedly for them to become independent. "And when are you planning to move out?" I asked one night during dinner. The question hung in the air like a bomb about to explode. Victoria stopped eating and stared at me. "Move out? Why would we move out, Lauren? We're perfect here. Besides, you need us. You're an elderly woman living alone. It's dangerous. You should be grateful we're here to take care of you." Take care of me. They were destroying me little by little, and they called it care. "I don't need you," I said, with the firmest voice I could muster. I lived alone for 3 years after Walter died, and I was perfectly fine. "You said this was temporary." Robert finally spoke, but his words were worse than his silence. "Mum, don't be selfish. Victoria is right. At your age, you shouldn't be alone. Besides, it's my house too. Or have you forgotten I'm your son?" Selfish. He called me selfish for wanting my own house back, for wanting to live without my every move, every breath being controlled. I felt something inside me break completely, that something that had been holding me together, that hope that Robert would eventually wake up and see what they were doing to his mother. "You're right," I said, getting up from the table. "It's your house too. Someday it will be all yours. I hope it's worth it." I left my plate unfinished and went to my room. I heard Victoria tell Robert, "Your mother is so dramatic, always making a scene." And Robert laughed. My son laughed at my pain. I started avoiding them. I left my room only when absolutely necessary. I ate as little as possible so I wouldn't have to use the kitchen during their hours. I became a ghost in my own house, invisible, silent, non-existent. And even so, Victoria found ways to remind me that I was the problem. "Lauren, your presence makes Robert tense," she told me one day. "Could you try to be less evident? When you're in the common areas, try not to draw attention." Less evident. They wanted me to disappear completely, to stop existing for their convenience. One afternoon, while I was cleaning the bathroom during my assigned time, I found papers hidden behind the mirror, legal documents with Robert and Victoria's names on them. I read them with trembling hands and confirmed my worst suspicions. Victoria had made Robert sign a broad power of attorney, documents that gave her control over medical, financial, and even house decisions if something happened to me. There was also a document that pretended to be a care agreement, where I supposedly agreed to let them stay in the house in exchange for them taking care of me in my old age. The document had my signature, but I had never signed it. It was a crude forgery, but probably enough to create legal problems if anyone questioned it. My head was spinning. Victoria wasn't just taking my house and my son. She was preparing the legal ground to keep everything. She was a calculating con artist, and Robert was her unwitting accomplice. Or maybe not so unwitting. I no longer knew what to think of my own son. I put the documents back exactly where I found them. I couldn't confront them yet because I didn't know what to do. I didn't have money for a lawyer. I had no one to turn to. My family was dead or lived far away. My friends had distanced themselves in these months because Victoria always found excuses for me not to go out. I was completely alone and trapped. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I thought of Walter. I thought about how he would have handled this situation. Walter was a man of action, not words. He never would have allowed anyone to humiliate us like this. And in that moment, lying in the darkness of my prison, something changed inside me. A spark of anger, of dignity, of strength that I thought was lost forever. I didn't know how yet, but I was going to get my life back. I was going to get my house back. And if that meant losing Robert in the process, then maybe I had already lost him a long time ago. Maybe the son I knew died the day he chose a cruel woman over his own mother. The night of the refrigerator incident came as the final straw. It had been an especially difficult day. Victoria had made me clean the entire house because she was expecting visitors the next day. Her friends were coming for a tea party, as if my living room were their social hall. I spent hours scrubbing floors, dusting furniture, tidying every corner until my knees and back ached. When I finished, it was almost 11 at night. Victoria inspected my work with a critical eye, running her finger over the window frames looking for dust, as if she were a ruthless supervisor. "I suppose it's acceptable," she finally said, without even looking at me. "You can go to sleep." As if she were giving me permission to rest in my own house after cleaning up for her guests. I went to my room, exhausted, but I couldn't sleep. My stomach was rumbling with hunger. I hadn't eaten hardly anything all day because Victoria had used the kitchen the whole time preparing elegant snacks for her meeting the next day. My assigned schedules had been completely ignored, but I didn't say anything because I had already learned that protesting only made things worse. Close to 2 hours past midnight, the hunger was unbearable. I thought that at that hour everyone would be asleep, and I could quietly go downstairs to find something to eat. Just a piece of bread, a little cheese, whatever it took to calm the emptiness in my stomach. I got up carefully, put on my slippers, and left my room, walking on tiptoes like a thief in my own house. The kitchen was dark and quiet. I breathed a sigh of relief, thinking I had managed to get down without waking anyone. I approached the refrigerator and put my hand on the handle. It was at that moment, just as I was starting to open it, that I felt the blow. A sharp, hard slap on my hand that made me let go immediately from the pain and surprise. "Where do you think you're going without permission?" Victoria's voice emerged from the darkness like a snake's hiss. She turned on the kitchen light, and there she was, in her pink silk robe, and an expression of fury on her face. My hand was burning where she had hit me, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the humiliation I felt. "I'm hungry," I said, my voice barely audible. "I just wanted to eat something." I hated myself for sounding so weak, so pleading. Victoria crossed her arms and blocked the refrigerator with her body as if it were a treasure she had to protect from a thief. "At 2 hours past midnight, without asking me for permission? I already told you the food in this house is managed. Lauren, you can't just come and eat whenever you feel like it." "It's my refrigerator," I whispered, feeling the tears start to well up in my eyes. My food, my house. But even as I said those words, I knew they sounded hollow, powerless. Victoria laughed, a cruel laugh that echoed in the silent kitchen. "Your house? We'll see about that." I heard footsteps on the stairs, and Robert appeared, dishevelled and sleepy-eyed. "What's going on? Why are you shouting?" I looked at my son with hope, thinking that maybe this time, this one time, he would defend me, that he would see the absurdity of the situation. An elderly mother being slapped for trying to eat in her own home. "Your mother was trying to steal food from the refrigerator without permission," Victoria said before I could speak. "I've explained the rules 1,000 times, but she won't listen." Steal. She had called me a thief in my own kitchen. I looked at Robert pleadingly, hoping he would say something, anything. "Mum," Robert said with a tired sigh, "is it necessary to do this in the middle of the night? You know the rules. If you were hungry, you could have waited until morning." My legs started to tremble. My own son was blaming me for being hungry, for wanting to eat in my own house, for existing. "Robert, please." My voice broke. "It's ridiculous. She hit me for trying to open the refrigerator. Don't you see how sick this is?" I held out my hand, showing him the red mark that was starting to form. "Look at me, son. Look at me and tell me this is okay." But Robert didn't look at my hand. Instead, he looked at Victoria, who returned a meaningful glance that I couldn't decipher. And then my son said the words that would shatter any hope I had left. "My wife is the owner of the house now. You need to ask her permission even to breathe." The world stopped. Even to breathe. The words floated in the air like sharp knives plunging into my heart over and over again. My son had just told me I had no right even to the air I breathed without his wife's permission. In my own house. The house I built with his father. The house where he was born. Where he took his first steps. Where I grew up as a mother. Victoria smiled triumphantly. She had completely won. She had taken my son and turned him into her weapon against me. "See, Lauren? Even Robert understands how things work now. The sooner you accept it, the better for everyone." She approached the refrigerator, opened it calmly, and took out a bottle of water. She drank it in front of me, slowly, savouring not only the water, but her victory. "Now go to your room," she ordered, closing the refrigerator. And the next time you're hungry during unauthorized hours, just hold it in or ask for permission properly. Robert nodded, supporting her. Mum, go to sleep. We'll talk tomorrow. But I knew tomorrow we wouldn't talk about anything. Tomorrow would be the same as today, and the day after that, too. I went up the stairs, feeling that every step cost me a piece of my soul. I entered my room and closed the door. I sat on the edge of my bed, and it was there, in the darkness of my prison, where everything finally changed. Something inside me broke, but not in the way they expected. I didn't break in defeat. I broke into clarity. I saw my life with brutal clarity. I saw that I had been begging for love, begging for respect, begging for a place in my own home. I had allowed them to reduce me to nothing, to turn me into a pleading shadow. And all because of fear. Fear of losing Robert, fear of being alone, fear of admitting that my son was no longer the boy I knew. But that night, with my hand still burning from the slap, with an empty stomach and a broken heart, I made a decision. A cold, clear, definitive decision. I wasn't going to beg anymore. I wasn't going to plead. I wasn't going to let them treat me like garbage in my own house anymore. I got up and turned on the light in my room. I reached under my bed for the box where I kept my most precious things. Inside was a little money I had been secretly saving, $20 and $50 bills I hid whenever I could. It wasn't much, maybe $300 in total, but it was something. I also took out an old notebook and started to write. I wrote down everything that had happened in these months. Every humiliation, every abuse, every moment Robert chose Victoria over me. I didn't know what good this record would do, but something told me I had to document everything. As I wrote, tears fell onto the paper, staining some of the words. But I didn't stop. I wrote until my hand ached, until I emptied all the accumulated poison from my chest. And when I finished, when there were no more words to write, I knew exactly what I had to do. I wasn't going to confront them. I wasn't going to fight. I wasn't going to give them the spectacle of seeing me broken and pleading one more time. I was going to do something they would never expect from me, something that would hurt them much more than any scream or complaint. I was going to leave. I was going to disappear from their lives and leave them with exactly what they wanted, the house without me. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I stayed sitting on my bed, looking out the window as the dark sky slowly turned into a grey dawn. With every minute that passed, my decision became more solid, clearer. There were no more doubts. There was no more fear. There was only a cold, definitive certainty. I had to get out of there before they completely destroyed me. At 6 a.m, when I heard Robert and Victoria getting up, I sprang into action. I waited for them to go into the bathroom and locked my door. I took an old suitcase from the closet, the one Walter and I used on our last trip to the beach together. I ran my fingers over the worn surface, remembering better days, days where love and respect were not a luxury, but something natural. I packed the essentials, clothes for a week, my personal documents, the photographs I kept in the shoebox, Walter's letters. Everything that truly mattered fit into a small suitcase. 40 years of life reduced to a few objects I could carry alone. I realized that everything else, the furniture, the appliances, the material things, meant nothing without dignity. I put the money I had saved in my purse, along with my medications and the house keys. I looked around my room one last time. Those walls had witnessed so many important moments. Sleepless nights, caring for baby Robert, late-night conversations with Walter planning our future, tears shed after his death. Now they were just walls that contained my suffering. I heard Robert and Victoria go downstairs for breakfast. Perfect. I heard them arguing over what to eat. I heard Victoria giving orders and Robert obeying. That morning ritual that had completely excluded me. I waited a few more minutes until I was sure they were busy in the kitchen. I grabbed my suitcase and my purse. I took a deep breath. This was the moment. I opened my door slowly, grateful that the hinges didn't make a sound. I walked down the hallway toward the stairs with my heart pounding so loudly I thought they would hear me. But they were too absorbed in their world, in their bubble, where I didn't exist. I went down the stairs step by step, holding my breath. The front door was only a few feet away. A few more steps, and I would be free. But just before leaving, I stopped. I couldn't just walk out. They needed to know that this time was different, that it wasn't a tantrum or a drama. It was a final decision. I left my suitcase by the door and went to the entry table where we always left the mail. I took a sheet of paper and a pen from my purse. My hand trembled slightly, but my mind was completely clear. I began to write in a firm, calm hand. Robert and Victoria, I'm leaving. Don't try to find me. The house is all yours now, just like you wanted. Enjoy everything you wanted so badly to take from me. But remember that a house without love is just an empty building. We'll see how long it takes for that truth to catch up to you. The property taxes are due next month. They are $1,200. The water and electricity are paid at the bank on the 15th. The furnace needs maintenance before winter. It costs around $300. I hope Robert's part-time job is enough to cover everything. Lauren. I reread the letter. It was perfect. Short, cold, informative. No tears, no pleas, no drama, just facts. I left it in the center of the table where they couldn't miss it. Then I grabbed my suitcase and opened the front door. The cool morning air hit my face like a slap of reality. I didn't look back. If I did, if I saw my house one more time, I might falter. I closed the door behind me with a soft click and walked down the pathway toward the street. Every step felt lighter, as if I were leaving behind not just a house, but invisible chains that had been choking me. I didn't have a specific plan, but I did have a place to go. Beatrice, my childhood friend, lived across town. We had drifted apart over the last few months because Victoria always made excuses when I wanted to visit her. That Robert needed me, that there were things to do around the house, that it was dangerous for me to go out alone. Now I understood it was just another way to isolate me, to cut me off from any outside support. I walked 3 blocks to the bus stop. The sun was fully rising now, painting the sky in orange and pink colors. It was beautiful, and I realized it had been months since I stopped to watch a sunrise. I had been so consumed by survival inside that house that I had forgotten a world existed outside. The bus arrived, and I got on. The driver looked at me curiously when he saw my suitcase, but didn't say anything. I sat next to the window and watched the streets of my neighborhood pass by. I knew every corner, every shop, every tree. I was leaving behind not just a house, but an entire life. But strangely, I didn't feel sadness. I felt something akin to peace. Like when you take off a shoe that has been hurting you all day and your feet can finally breathe. The constant oppression, the perpetual fear, the daily humiliation, all of it was being left behind with every mile the bus traveled. I arrived at Beatrice's house after 40 minutes. It was a modest but cozy house, with flowers in the front yard and a rocking chair on the porch. Beatrice always had a good touch for making any space feel like home. I rang the doorbell, feeling nervous for the first time since I left. What if she didn't want to take me in? What if she thought I was crazy? The door opened and there was Beatrice, her silver hair pulled back in a bun and her kind eyes behind her glasses. When she saw me standing there with my suitcase, her expression changed from surprise to concern. "Lauren, my goodness, what happened?" She didn't say anything else. She simply opened her arms, and I collapsed into them. I cried like I hadn't cried in months. I cried for everything lost, for my son I no longer recognized, for the house I left behind, for the woman I used to be and almost forgot. Beatrice held me without asking questions, letting me empty out all the accumulated pain. When I could finally speak, I told her everything, every detail, every humiliation, every moment of breakdown. Beatrice listened in silence, her face showing increasing indignation. When I finished my story, she took my hands and said with a firmness that comforted me, "You stay here as long as you need. This is your home now, and that son of yours and that viper of a wife are going to regret having treated you like that. You'll see." I settled into Beatrice's guest room. It was small but cozy, with light green curtains and a bed with a soft comforter. That night, I slept more soundly than I had in months. There were no nightmares, no jumpiness every time I heard a noise, just peaceful, restorative sleep. Meanwhile, in my old house, Robert and Victoria were waking up to a new reality. I imagined the scene. Victoria yelling my name, expecting the breakfast that never came. Robert going upstairs to look for me and finding my room empty. The initial panic, the confusion, and finally finding the letter. I imagined them reading it, maybe even laughing at first, thinking it was a fit of pique and that I would return soon. But something would tell them that this time was different, that there was no going back, that they had finally pushed too far, and the submissive mother, the convenient mother-in-law, had disappeared forever. And most importantly, now they would have to face the reality that I had been sustaining alone all this time. The expenses, the responsibilities, the bills that arrived every month, everything they took for granted while treating me like garbage. Now it was their problem. The first week at Beatrice's house was like waking up from a long, exhausting nightmare. Every morning, I opened my eyes expecting to hear Victoria's voice ordering me to do something, but there was only peaceful silence and the sound of birds singing outside. Beatrice treated me with a kindness I had forgotten existed, making coffee in the mornings and asking me how I had slept without expecting anything in return. "You don't have to do anything," she told me on the third day when she found me washing the breakfast dishes. "Just rest, Lauren. Recover." But I needed to feel useful. I needed to prove to myself that I still had value beyond being someone's emotional punching bag. So I insisted on helping with the chores, but this time it was different. I did it because I wanted to, not because I was forced. My phone started ringing on the second day. It was Robert. I let it ring until it stopped. Then came the messages. First, they were confused. "Mum, where are you? We're worried." Then they became more urgent. "We need to talk. Please respond." And finally, they showed their true nature. "The bills are coming. We don't know what to do. You have to come back." I didn't answer any of them. Every message that arrived was a confirmation that I had made the right decision. They didn't ask how I was, if I was okay, if I had a place to sleep or something to eat. They only cared about the bills, the responsibilities, everything I had been handling alone, while they enjoyed my house like ungrateful parasites. Beatrice told me Robert had come looking for me at her house on the fourth day. "He rang the doorbell like a madman," she told me as we drank tea in her living room. "I told him I didn't know where you were, and even if I did, I wouldn't tell him. He looked desperate, Lauren." But it wasn't the desperation of a son worried about his mother. It was the desperation of someone who had just realized he lost his safety net. She was right. Robert's messages confirmed it. At first, they thought they could handle things alone. Robert's part-time job, paid $800 a month. The property taxes were $1,200. Already the math wasn't working. And that didn't even count electricity, water, gas, food, gas for the car, and all the expenses Victoria generated with her constant whims. Victoria tried calling me once. Just once. Her voice on the voicemail was icy. "Lauren, I know you're being dramatic and looking for attention. When you're done with your tantrum, come home. But don't think this will change the rules. Things will still be done my way." I deleted the message, feeling a mix of indignation and satisfaction. She still didn't understand anything. She still thought she was in control. In the second week, Beatrice convinced me to block their numbers. "You don't need to read that, Lauren. It only hurts you, and they don't deserve another second of your time." So I blocked Robert. I blocked Victoria. And it was like finally closing a door that had been open, letting in cold drafts for months. I started to recover slowly. Beatrice took me for walks in the park every afternoon. At first, I tired quickly. Months of constant stress had weakened my body more than I thought. But little by little, my strength returned. Something else returned, too. My smile. One day Beatrice took a picture of me while we were feeding the ducks at the lake, and when I saw it, I was surprised. That smiling woman in the photo was me, but it had been so long since I had seen myself like that. I barely recognized myself. "You look 10 years younger," Beatrice commented. "It's incredible what peace of mind does." She was right. The wrinkles around my eyes seemed less deep. My posture was more erect. Even my voice sounded different, stronger and more confident. I was finding myself again after months of being lost. Meanwhile, as I later learned from a neighbor Beatrice ran into at the supermarket, things at my old house were quickly falling apart. The first bill they couldn't pay was the property taxes. The notice arrived from the city with the warning of foreclosure if they didn't pay in 30 days. Robert tried to get a loan, but with his precarious job and no solid credit history, no bank would lend him money. Victoria began pressuring Robert to find more work. "How is it possible that you can't even maintain a house?" she yelled at him, according to the neighbor who heard them fighting through the open windows. "You're useless, just like your mother." The irony was delicious. Now Robert was experiencing the same treatment I had endured, and Victoria was showing her true nature without the filter she used when I was present. The water was next. After not paying for 2 months in a row, they cut it off. Suddenly, the house Victoria had been redecorating with such care had no water for bathing, for cooking, for washing her expensive clothes. They had to carry buckets from a neighbor's house who took pity on them temporarily. The princess who scoffed at my old junk was now carrying water like she was in a rural village. Food became a problem. Victoria was used to buying expensive organic products, premium cuts of meat, imported cheeses. With $800 a month and bills piling up, those luxuries disappeared. They started eating cheap noodles and rice every day. The same Victoria who controlled my every bite was now going hungry because of her own stupidity. Robert tried to get a second job, but no one would hire him. He was desperate, stressed, probably not sleeping well. And Victoria, instead of supporting him, blamed him for everything. "This is your fault," she told him. "If you had been more of a man, if you had been able to provide for me, we wouldn't be like this. Your mother ruined us by leaving." The neighbor told me that part with indignation. "I threw it back in your son's face that it was their fault, Lauren. I told him they treated their mother like trash, and now they were reaping what they sowed. You should have seen his face." I imagined the scene and felt a small satisfaction. It wasn't revenge I was seeking. It was justice. And justice was finally reaching them. In the third week, I received a certified letter. It was from a lawyer representing Robert. I opened the envelope with trembling hands, fearing the worst. The letter was a formal request for me to return and fulfill my family obligations, and a veiled threat that if I didn't, they would take legal action to protect the family estate. I showed the letter to Beatrice. She immediately called her nephew, who was a lawyer. He read it and laughed. "This has no legal validity. They cannot force her to live in her own house or pay the bills if she doesn't want to. In fact, they are the intruder's views the moment she left. She has every right to evict them if she wants to." Evict them? I hadn't thought of that. The house was still mine. It was in my name. I had left, but they had no legal right to stay there without my permission. Beatrice's nephew explained that I could start an eviction process immediately. It would take about 2 months, but the house would be completely mine again. I thought about it all night. Did I want to get the house back? Did I want to return to that place full of recent bitter memories? The house where my son betrayed me, where I was hit for trying to eat, where I lost my dignity little by little. On the other hand, it was my house. The house I built with Walter, where we lived our best years. I decided to wait. Not out of weakness, but out of strategy. I wanted Robert and Victoria to fully feel the weight of their actions. I wanted them to hit rock bottom, to understand that the life I had been sustaining for them was neither easy nor free. And above all, I wanted Robert to wake up from Victoria's manipulation and see what he had truly lost. At the end of the month, the electricity shut-off notice arrived. The house was completely dark. No water, no electricity, with debts piling up and no money to pay for anything. The fantasy Victoria had built was crumbling brick by brick, and Robert was finally starting to see the truth he had been avoiding for months. It was in the 4th week when everything definitively exploded. Beatrice arrived one afternoon with fresh news from her network of gossipy neighbours. "Lauren, you're not going to believe what happened," she said, her eyes shining with excitement. "Victoria left Robert. She left the house with her suitcases and told him he was a failure who couldn't even keep a roof over their heads." I stood paralyzed, processing the information. Victoria had abandoned Robert. The woman who swore to love him for better or worse, who manipulated him into betraying his own mother, who turned him into her obedient puppet, had left him the moment he stopped being useful to her. The irony was so perfect, it almost hurt. "And Robert?" I asked, unable to help myself. Despite everything he had done to me, he was still my son, and a part of me still worried about him. "He's devastated," Beatrice replied. "The neighbour says he cries all day. The house is a mess, no electricity or water. He's still there like a ghost, not knowing what to do." That night, I couldn't sleep. I imagined Robert alone in that dark house, probably hungry, penniless, abandoned by the woman for whom he sacrificed his mother. A part of me wanted to run to help him, hug him like when he was a child having nightmares. But another part, the part that had grown stronger during these weeks, knew that if I did, I would be validating everything he did to me. I would be telling him he could treat me like garbage, and that I would always be there to pick up the pieces. On the 5th day after Victoria left, Robert showed up at Beatrice's house. He arrived at nightfall, gaunt and dirty, with deep dark circles under his eyes and wrinkled clothes. Beatrice announced him through the intercom. "He's here. Do you want to see him?" My heart was pounding. This was the moment I had been avoiding and anticipating at the same time. "Tell him to come in," I replied with a shaky voice. I sat in the living room waiting for him, trying to prepare for what was coming. When he walked in, I barely recognized him. My son, who had always been meticulous about his appearance, looked like a vagrant. He had several days' growth of beard, greasy and disheveled hair, a stained shirt. But what struck me most were his eyes. They were red and swollen, full of a pain that I knew very well. "Mum," he said in a broken voice. That word I hadn't heard from his lips in months sounded strange and familiar at the same time. He stood at the entrance to the living room, as if he didn't know if he had permission to come closer. I didn't say anything. I just looked at him, waiting, needing him to take the first step, to say what he had to say. "I'm sorry," he finally whispered. "I'm so sorry, Mum. You were right about everything. About Victoria. About what she was doing to me. About what we did to you." Tears began to roll down his cheeks, leaving clean tracks on his dirty face. "I was an idiot. I was the worst son in the world. I treated you like trash when you only gave me love my whole life." I wanted to run to him, hug him, tell him everything was forgiven, but I remained seated, firm. "And what changed, Robert?" I asked in a quiet but cold voice. "Are you apologizing because you truly understand what you did, or because Victoria left you, and now you're alone?" The question hung in the air like a sharp knife. Robert broke down. He literally fell to his knees on the living room floor, sobbing like a child. "I realized everything when she left. She told me I was useless, that I was never worth anything, that she only tolerated me because she thought you would have more money. She said she wasted her time with me." His words came out broken between sobs. "And while she was telling me all that, all I could think about was how I told you the exact same things, how I treated you worse than a stranger." "She hit my hand for trying to eat in my own house," I said, with no emotion in my voice. "And you told her she owned the house, that I needed her permission even to breathe. Do you remember that, Robert?" He nodded, unable to look at me, shame painted on every line of his face. "I think about it every day," he said through tears. "Every day I hate myself for having said those words. Dad must be rolling over in his grave because of what I became. I betrayed everything you both taught me. I betrayed the only person who was always there for me. His pain was real. I could see it. But pain didn't erase months of abuse and humiliation." "Do you know how I felt that night?" I asked him, and for the first time my voice trembled. "I felt like my son had died, that the boy I raised, who I cared for, who I loved with all my heart, had disappeared, and in his place was a cruel stranger. I died 1,000 times in those months, Robert. 1,000 times I wished I wouldn't wake up every morning because the pain of living in my own house being treated like that was unbearable." "I know, Mum. I know, and I have no excuses," he said, finally raising his gaze to me. "Victoria manipulated me, but I let her. I chose to believe her instead of you. I chose to treat you badly every day because it was easier than confronting her. I am completely guilty, and I don't expect you to forgive me. I just needed you to know that I finally understand. I finally see everything I lost." We remained silent for a long moment. Beatrice had discreetly disappeared, leaving us alone. I looked at my son kneeling on the floor, broken and repentant, and felt a mixture of emotions so complex I couldn't separate them. Love, pain, anger, compassion, all tangled in an impossible knot in my chest. "Apologies are not enough," I finally said. "You can't destroy a person for months and expect a few tears to fix everything." Robert nodded. "I know. I'm not asking you to come back or to forgive me now. I just needed to tell you I'm sorry and that you have every right to hate me." "I don't hate you, Robert," I admitted, feeling my own tears starting to form. "That's the worst part of all. After everything you did to me, I still love you because you are my son. But I don't trust you anymore. I don't know if I ever can again." Those words broke both of us, because it was the most painful truth that existed between us. "What are you going to do now?" I asked him after a moment. Robert shrugged, defeated. I don't know. The house has no electricity or water. I owe 3 months of taxes and 2 months of utilities. My job barely pays for food. I'll probably end up losing the house anyway. There was acceptance in his voice, as if he knew he deserved to lose everything. It's my house, Robert, I reminded him softly. It's in my name. You're not going to lose it, because technically, it was never yours. I watched him process that information, realizing another layer of his foolishness. He had fought over a house that wasn't even legally his. He had betrayed his mother for something he never had. I can start the eviction process if I want to, I continued. My lawyer says in 2 months you would be out, and the house would be completely mine again. I saw fear cross his face. You're going to do it? His voice was barely a whisper. I don't know yet, I answered honestly. Part of me wants to get my house back. Another part never wants to return to that place full of painful memories. Robert remained silent, not daring to ask for anything, not expecting anything. That humility, that acceptance of the consequences of his actions was new. Perhaps for the first time in his life, he was facing reality without anyone protecting him. Beatrice prepared something for you to eat, I told him, pointing toward the kitchen. Go, eat something. You look terrible. I don't deserve your kindness, he said, not moving. You probably don't, I agreed. But I'm not being kind for you. I'm doing it because I'm not like Victoria. I don't abandon people when they are at their worst, even when they've hurt me. It was a silent lesson, a demonstration of the difference between real love and the manipulation he had confused it with for so long. Robert ate silently in the kitchen, while I stayed in the living room, processing everything. When he finished, he stood at the door, ready to leave. Thank you for listening to me, Mum, and thank you for the food. I know I don't deserve any of this. I nodded without saying anything else. I watched him walk away down the street with his shoulders slumped, a shadow of the man he used to be. 2 months passed since Robert's visit. 2 months in which I had to make the most difficult decisions of my life. I didn't go back to the house immediately. I needed time to heal, to recover the pieces of myself I had lost in those months of torment. Beatrice was my anchor throughout that process, reminding me every day that I deserved respect and dignity. Robert didn't show up again, but he sent short messages every week. He didn't ask for anything, just updates. I got a second job at a gas station. I paid the water bill. It's working again. I cleaned the whole house. It's how you like it. They were simple messages that showed genuine effort for the first time in a long time, but I still wasn't ready to respond. It was Beatrice's nephew who finally helped me see things clearly. Mrs. Lauren, that house is yours. You have 3 options. Take it back and move back in. Take it back and sell it to start over somewhere else. Or keep it and rent it out while you live elsewhere. But what you cannot do is let fear decide for you. He was right. I had run away from my house, but I was still letting that place control me. I was still a prisoner, even though I wasn't physically there anymore. So I made a decision. I would go back, but on my own terms. The house was mine, and it was time to fully reclaim it. I asked the lawyer to prepare a legal document. It wasn't an eviction, but an agreement. Robert could stay in the house under very specific conditions. He would pay a symbolic rent of $200 monthly that would go directly into a savings account in his name, so that when he was ready, he could truly become independent. He had to keep the house in perfect condition. And most importantly, he had to attend therapy to work on how he was manipulated and how to repair our relationship. When I presented the document to Robert in a neutral coffee shop, his hands trembled as he read it. "You're giving me another chance," he asked, his eyes full of tears. It's not a chance, Robert, I clarified with a firm voice. It's a contractual agreement. If you fail on any of these points, you leave the house immediately and without discussion. Do you understand? I understand, he nodded fervently. And Mum, about the rent money, I can pay you more. I have 2 jobs now and… I interrupted him, raising my hand. It's not about the money. It's about you learning to value things, to understand that nothing is free, and that actions have consequences. The $200 are symbolic, but important. He signed the document without hesitation. But I didn't return to the house yet. Instead, I decided to stay with Beatrice for a few more months. I needed Robert to prove with actions, not just words, that he had truly changed. And to my surprise, he did. He sent photos of the clean house every week, proof of utility payments, even certificates from his therapy sessions. In his therapy, as he told me later, he finally processed how Victoria had manipulated him, how she identified his insecurities, his unemployment, his vulnerability, and used them to turn him into her puppet. How she systematically isolated him from his mother until he could no longer see reality. The therapist made him understand that even though he had been manipulated, he was still responsible for his actions. That distinction was crucial. 3 months after signing the agreement, I finally went back to my house. Robert greeted me at the door, visibly nervous. The house was impeccable. He had cleaned every corner. He had repaired things that were broken. He had even put fresh flowers in the vase by the entrance, the one Victoria had thrown in the trash, and he recovered. "Welcome home, Mum," he said in a shaky voice. I walked through the rooms, seeing all the changes. My favourite armchair was back in its original place. The photographs Victoria had stored away were back on the walls. My closet had all my clothes perfectly organised. He had erased every trace of Victoria from the house, as if she had never existed. But the most important thing was that he had recovered the spirit of home the house had before. It no longer felt like a prison, but a refuge. "You did a good job," I told him, and I saw his shoulders relax with relief. "Thank you for giving me this chance, Mum. I know I don't deserve it, but I swear I won't disappoint you." The following months were a slow reconstruction. Robert and I didn't go back to the way we were before because that was impossible. Something had broken between us that could never be completely repaired. But we built something new, something different. A relationship based on mutual respect, on clear boundaries, on honesty. I was no longer the mother who did everything for her son, and he was no longer the son who took it for granted. We were 2 adults learning to live together with the scars of the past. Robert worked hard at his 2 jobs. He saved every penny he could. 6 months after the agreement, he came home with news. "Mum, I think I'm ready to look for my own apartment. I've saved enough for the deposit and the first month's rent." I felt a mix of pride and relief. "Are you sure?" I asked him. "Completely sure. It's time for me to be truly independent. It's time for me to show that I can live my own life without being a burden to anyone." The day Robert moved into his small apartment, I helped him pack. It was strange and bittersweet. This time the separation was healthy, necessary, chosen for the right reasons. "Visit often," I told him as he loaded the last box into his car. "And Mum," he replied, hugging me, "thank you for not giving up on me, even when I gave you every reason in the world to do so. I now live alone in my house, as it always should have been after Walter died. Beatrice comes to visit me 3 times a week, and sometimes we stay up late, talking and laughing. Robert comes for dinner every Sunday. Our relationship isn't perfect, but it's real and built on honest foundations. He's still in therapy, working on his issues. I also started therapy to heal the wounds those months left me with. Sometimes I think about Victoria and wonder where she is. As I heard, she found another vulnerable man with money and is repeating the same pattern. I hope that person has the strength Robert didn't have to escape in time. But she's no longer my problem or my concern. She's a closed chapter in our lives. What I learned from this whole experience is that love without respect is not love. It's abuse in disguise. That family doesn't give you the right to mistreat someone. That sometimes walking away from the people you love is the only way to save yourself and give them the chance to grow. And above all, I learned that it's never too late to reclaim your dignity, no matter how long you lost it. My house is once again my sanctuary. The walls no longer hold echoes of humiliation, but of music I play when I want, of laughter with Beatrice, of honest conversations with Robert when he visits. I recovered my life. I recovered my space. And most importantly, I recovered myself. That night, when I tried to open the refrigerator and received a slap, now seems like a distant bad dream, a reminder of how low a person can fall when they forget their worth. But it's also a reminder of the strength I found when I finally said, enough. When I chose my well-being over the fear of loneliness. I'm 62 years old, and I'm starting over. Some might say it's too late to start again, but I know it's never too late to choose dignity. It's never too late to reclaim your life. And it's never, ever too late to remember that you deserve respect, especially in your own home, especially from the people who claim to love you. This is my story. It's not a story of revenge, but of recovery. It's not about punishment, but about healing. And if someone going through something similar reads this, I want them to know this. You have the power to change your situation. You may be scared, you may feel weak, but inside you is a strength you don't even imagine. You just need to take the first step. The rest comes after. Today, I open my refrigerator when I want to. I eat when I'm hungry. I breathe without asking permission. And every time I do these simple things, I remember the price I paid for this freedom, and I smile. Because finally, after everything, I came home. Not just to the physical house, but to myself.